My brother's new wife had no clue I owned the house they were living in. "You're a pathetic 40-year-old leech. Get out," she shouted. Can you imagine the searing rage that boiled in my blood when my own brother's new wife, a woman I'd opened my home to, looked me dead in the eye and screamed, "You're a pathetic 40-year-old leech. Get out of our house." What she didn't know, what she refused to believe, was that it was my house all along. And the look on her face when the police arrived, deed in hand, was absolutely priceless. Let me take you back to how it all started. My name is Madison Reynolds, and at 33, I've managed to build a pretty successful career in real estate investment. But 3 years ago, my world and my brother Ryan's shattered into a million pieces. Our parents, the anchors of our lives, died in a tragic accident involving a drunk driver. The grief was crushing. Ryan, for years my senior, spiraled. He lost his job, his girlfriend left him, and he was at rock bottom. You see, growing up, Ryan and I were inseparable. Moving 5 times during our childhood meant we were each other's constant. I always felt this deep need to protect him. When our parents passed, I inherited their home and a couple of rental properties. Ryan, he got the financial assets. It made sense. I was already in real estate. Managing properties was second nature to me. But the family home, that beautiful colonial with 4 bedrooms and a sprawling backyard where we spent countless summers, sat empty. So, when Ryan couldn't afford his apartment anymore, the solution seemed obvious. Move into the house, I told him one rainy afternoon over coffee. Take as long as you need to get back on your feet. No rent, no timeline. His eyes, usually so downcast, met mine with a flicker of pure relief. Mom and Dad would have wanted it this way, I assured him, and I truly believed it. My own place, a modern loft downtown, suited my lifestyle perfectly. The family home was supposed to be his sanctuary, a place to heal. For about 1.5 years, it was. Ryan slowly started to mend. He began freelancing again, took up jogging, and even joined me for our traditional Sunday dinners, a ritual we fiercely held onto to honor our parents. Then, Allison entered the picture. They met at a grief support group. Already a red flag in hindsight, but at the time, I was just so relieved to see my brother smiling again. Allison had supposedly lost her husband in a workplace accident a couple of years prior. Their romance was a whirlwind, progressing at warp speed. Within 3 months of dating, Ryan called me, his voice buoyant with an excitement I hadn't heard in ages. "We're getting married," he announced. I was momentarily speechless. Wow, Ryan. That's really fast. But he brushed off my concerns with, "When you know, you know." The wedding was small, at the courthouse. I tried my best to be supportive, even with a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. Allison was petite, blonde, and always impeccably dressed, in a way that felt more calculated than truly stylish. At the modest reception, I noticed little things that gnawed at me. She'd subtly steer Ryan away whenever I approached him. She corrected his table manners in front of everyone, dismissed his honeymoon ideas with a cutting remark that made him flush. She even cast a cold, assessing gaze at my simple, elegant pantsuit, asking if I ever dressed like a woman. Still, I bit my tongue. Ryan had been through so much. If she made him happy, I'd make an effort. I even gave them a generous wedding check, which Allison promptly, almost aggressively, pocketed before Ryan could even thank me. As we hugged goodbye that night, Ryan said, "We should have her over for dinner soon at the house." Not your house. That subtle shift, I realize now, was the first domino. Just 2 weeks after the wedding, I drove to the house for our traditional Sunday dinner. Ryan had texted that Allison was excited to host. I arrived with a bottle of wine and a potted orchid, a small housewarming gift. The moment I walked through the front door, I felt disoriented. The antique console table that had been in our family for generations, our mother's cherished piece, was gone. The warm beige walls were stark white. All the family photos, gone. "We've been redecorating," Ryan mumbled, seeing my expression. "Allison has an amazing eye for design." Allison emerged from the kitchen, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Madison, right on time." As Ryan took my coat, I saw more changes. Our comfy sectional sofa replaced by a sleek, uninviting leather couch. My mother's art books, nowhere. It was so outdated, Allison declared when I commented. All those heavy antiques and dark colors. We're bringing it into this century. I swallowed my retort about those outdated pieces being family heirlooms. Did you store Mom's console table? I asked carefully. Ryan and Allison exchanged a quick glance. We donated some things, she said breezily. Can't build a future surrounded by the past, right? My stomach dropped. Throughout dinner, Ryan seemed anxious, constantly checking Allison's expression before he spoke. When I tried to share a family anecdote, he abruptly changed the subject as Allison's smile tightened. Then, Allison turned her sights on me. Don't you find it lonely, living all by yourself in that apartment? No husband, no kids. Your biological clock must be ticking pretty loudly. She laughed, as if it was a harmless joke. Ryan looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. I've never defined my success by marriage or children, I replied evenly, trying to keep my voice steady. But I appreciate your concern. Later, as we cleared dishes, Allison mentioned their plans to renovate the kitchen. The mortgage is paid off, so we can afford to invest in improvements. I nearly dropped the plate. Mortgage? Ryan hadn't mentioned a mortgage. Such a blessing to start our marriage without housing costs, she continued, completely oblivious. I glanced at Ryan. He was suddenly very interested in loading the dishwasher. He hadn't corrected her. He had let her believe he owned the house. After Allison excused herself, I pulled Ryan aside. She thinks you own the house, I whispered. He looked utterly miserable. Please don't say anything, Maddie. When we first met, she assumed I owned the place, and I didn't correct her. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit from childhood. You don't understand. Allison values security and success. If she knew I was living in my sister's house rent-free. My heart ached for him, for the lost boy beneath the desperate man. Ryan, relationships should be built on honesty. I'll tell her eventually, he promised. Just not now. Please, Maddie, do this for me. Against my better judgment, I agreed. After all, it was still a family house. Its specific ownership wasn't important as long as Ryan was getting back on his feet, right? Over the next few weeks, my visits became a minefield. Allison made passive-aggressive comments about me, dropping by unannounced, even when I texted ahead. She questioned why I still had a key to their house, suggesting it was intrusive. Each time, Ryan would shoot me apologetic glances, but remain silent. More and more family items disappeared. The grandfather clock, Dad's first edition novels, Mom's hand-painted serving dishes. Allison always had vague answers. Decluttering. Creating space. The tension between us, between me and Allison, became palpable. Ryan started making excuses for why Sunday dinners had to be postponed or canceled. Twice, I arrived at the agreed time only to find they'd forgotten and made other plans. It hurt more than I cared to admit. It wasn't just the dismissal of traditions, it was watching my brother transform into someone I barely recognized. Someone afraid to disagree with his new wife. Someone who averted his eyes when family history was mentioned. I was losing him and I didn't know how to stop it. 3 months into their marriage, the situation deteriorated dramatically. My weekly visits dwindled to occasional, tense encounters where I felt more like an unwelcome intruder than family. One Tuesday afternoon, I stopped by unannounced, something I never did because I needed to retrieve some tax documents I'd stored in the home office. I'd texted Ryan, but he hadn't responded. I used my key, calling out as I entered. Silence. As I made my way to the office, more changes hit me. The hallway, once a timeline of our lives with family photos, was now decorated with generic artwork, like something out of a hotel. The door to my parents' bedroom, which I'd always assumed Ryan was using, now had a cutesy sign, Master Suite, Private. In the office, I went straight to the filing cabinet where I'd kept important documents. My files were missing. The house deed, the property records gone. Frowning, I expanded my search. The cabinet had been completely reorganized. Just as I was about to give up, I spotted my father's antique roll-top desk in the corner. A beloved piece, passed down for generations. Now, its beautiful cherrywood surface was covered with a cloth, used as a stand for a large TV.
My heart sank. The disrespect.
On impulse, I rolled up the top to check the hidden compartment where Dad had always kept important items. Empty. As I turned to leave, something caught my eye on Allison's laptop screen, which she'd left open on the desk. My blood ran cold. It was an online marketplace listing. My mother's vintage Tiffany lamp, a wedding gift from my grandmother, was for sale. Authentic Tiffany-style lamp, perfect condition, $800. I felt physically ill. They were selling family heirlooms. I took out my phone and snapped a picture of the screen, then quickly browsed other listings under the same account name. There were dozens of items I recognized. The missing first edition books, Mom's silver serving pieces, even the small oil paintings that had hung in the dining room for decades. Just then, I heard the front door open and Allison's voice calling out to Ryan. I quickly closed the laptop and headed downstairs, my mind racing. Allison's smile froze when she saw me. Madison, what a surprise. I texted Ryan about some tax documents, I explained, holding up the folder I'd managed to find. Really? He didn't mention it. Her tone dripped with disbelief. How did you get in? I used my key, I said, noticing Ryan's profound discomfort as he stood behind his wife. Your key? She repeated flatly. Ryan, I thought we discussed this. Ryan shuffled his feet. I meant to talk to you about that, Maddie. Allison cut in. We value our privacy as a married couple. It's inappropriate for you to have unrestricted access to our home. I understand privacy, I said, my voice dangerously calm. But this has been our family home for 15 years. I've always had a key. Things change when people get married, Allison sneered. I'm sure you understand, or would if you ever settled down. I ignored the jab and turned to Ryan. Can we talk privately for a minute about the family items that seem to be disappearing? Ryan looked panicked. What items? The Tiffany lamp, Dad's books, Mom's silver. I listed, watching his face fall. I saw the online listings, Ryan. Allison stepped between us. Those things were just gathering dust. We're creating our own home now. Those things, I said, struggling to keep my voice even, are family heirlooms with both monetary and sentimental value. Ryan inherited the contents of the house, Allison stated firmly. He can do whatever he wants with them. I stared at my brother. Is that what you told her? That you inherited everything? Ryan couldn't meet my eyes. Allison, maybe we should discuss this later. There's nothing to discuss, she snapped. Your sister needs to respect our boundaries and our property. The irony of her claiming ownership of a house that legally belonged to me was almost too much to bear. But the hurt in Ryan's eyes stopped me from revealing the truth. Ryan, I said quietly, some of those items mean a lot to me. They're pieces of our parents, our history. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of the brother I knew. Then Allison placed a possessive hand on his arm, and his expression shuddered. We need to make our own history now, Maddie, he said weakly. Maybe you could just take what's important to you. That would be helpful. I agreed, relieved at this small concession. Not much, just Mom's jewelry box, the family photo albums, and maybe a few of the books. Absolutely not. Allison interrupted. We've already promised the books to a collector, and the jewelry is part of Ryan's inheritance. Something inside me snapped. After months of watching her dismantle my family memories, isolate my brother, and now, to stand in the doorway of my house telling me what I couldn't have. Ryan, is this really what you want? To erase every trace of our family? Don't manipulate him, Allison hissed. Just because your life is empty doesn't mean you can cling to your brother forever. Finally, Ryan spoke up, but not as I hoped. Maybe it's best if you go now, Maddie. We can talk about this another time. I left with only my tax documents, feeling utterly hollowed out. 2 days later, my key no longer worked in the lock. Ryan texted an apology, claiming Allison thought it best to change the locks for security reasons. He promised to set aside the items I'd requested. But when I arrived at our agreed meeting time that weekend, no one answered the door or my calls. This pattern repeated. Ryan would arrange to meet, then cancel at the last minute with vague excuses. A month later, I received a text from an unknown number with photos of a storage unit containing a few random boxes of old clothes and kitchen items. Not the jewelry box, not the photo albums, not the books. The message read, "Ryan asked me to let you know you can pick these up." When I called Ryan to ask what was happening, Allison answered his phone. "Ryan's busy," she said curtly. "We've been more than generous with what we've given you. It's time you stopped harassing us." "Harassing?" I echoed in disbelief. "I'm trying to preserve family memories." "Family memories?" she scoffed. "You mean your parents' old junk? Ryan is moving forward with his life. You should try it sometime." Before I could respond, she hung up. My subsequent calls went straight to voicemail. Ryan eventually texted that he was taking a break from the drama. I felt like I was losing not just the physical connections to my parents, but my brother as well. For weeks, I debated. Should I assert my legal ownership of the house and risk destroying my relationship with Ryan completely? Or continue to watch as Allison systematically erased our family history and isolated my brother? The decision was made for me when I discovered, through social media, that they were hosting a housewarming party at my house and hadn't even invited me. I decided against causing a scene at their party. Instead, I waited until the following Sunday, our traditional family dinner day. I drove to the house with a peace offering, a homemade apple pie, using our mother's recipe. When I rang the doorbell, I could hear music playing inside. After a long moment, the door opened just enough for Allison to peer out. Her expression hardened. "Madison, this isn't a good time." I forced a smile. "I won't stay long. I just brought pie for Sunday dinner. Is Ryan home?" She didn't open the door wider. "We have plans. Please, Allison. Just 5 minutes with my brother." She sighed dramatically. "Wait here." The door closed in my face. Several minutes passed before it opened again. This time, Ryan stood there, looking profoundly uncomfortable. "Hey, Maddie," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "This really isn't a good day." "It's Sunday," I said simply. "Family dinner. Mom's apple pie." I held up the dessert. Ryan glanced over his shoulder before stepping onto the porch and partially closing the door behind him. "Look, Allison and I have some friends coming over soon. Can we do this another time?" "Ryan," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "You've canceled or ignored the last 6 times I've tried to see you." He ran a hand through his hair. "Things have been busy with the house renovations." "So I've heard." The housewarming looked nice from the photos. His face flushed. "Maddie, The door yanked open behind him. Allison stood there, arms crossed, her eyes blazing. "This is exactly the kind of intrusion I'm talking about, Ryan," she snapped. "Unannounced visits, guilt trips about family traditions." "I texted yesterday," I pointed out calmly. "And Ryan told you we were busy," she snapped. "Yet here you are anyway, forcing your way into our lives." "I'm not forcing anything," I countered, my patience wearing thin. "I'm trying to maintain a relationship with my only brother." Allison rolled her eyes. "Always the victim. Ryan has a new family now."
Me.
"He doesn't need you hovering around like some sad, lonely spinster." Ryan winced. "Allison, please." "No, Ryan," she shrieked. "It's time someone said it." She turned back to me, her voice rising to a furious crescendo. "You're a pathetic 40-year-old leech. Get out and stay out of our house." Something inside me snapped. After months of watching her dismantle my family memories, isolate my brother, and now, to stand in the doorway of my house, telling me to leave, I burst out laughing. The sound, sharp and unexpected, clearly startled both of them. Allison's face was contorted with anger. "You think this is funny? I'll call the police. Have you removed for trespassing?" I wiped tears of laughter from my eyes. "Oh, please do. Try to make me leave. Call the police. I'd love to see their faces." Ryan looked absolutely panicked. "Madison, please. Let's not escalate this." "No, Ryan," I said, my voice suddenly calm, clear, and utterly resolute. "I've respected your wishes for months. I've watched as family heirlooms disappeared. I've tolerated being locked out of my own property, but I'm done." Allison's eyes narrowed. Your property. This is our house. Ryan inherited it from your parents. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folder. Actually, no. Ryan inherited their financial assets. I inherited the house, and I have the deed right here to prove it. The color drained from Allison's face. You're lying. The deed is registered in my name. I continued, opening the folder to show them. I've been letting Ryan live here rent-free to help him get back on his feet after our parents died. Ryan looked like he might be sick. Maddie, I can explain. Allison snatched the papers from my hand, scanning them, her expression shifting from disbelief to pure, unadulterated fury. She rounded on Ryan. You lied to me. You said you owned this house. Ryan stammered, I was going to tell you, but all this time we've been living in her house? Allison's voice rose to a shriek. Making improvements to her property. While she had a key and could walk in any time, she stormed back into the house, grabbing her phone. I'm calling the police. This has to be fraud or something. Go ahead, I said calmly, following her inside.
Call them.
I have all the documentation right here. Ryan stood frozen between us as Allison frantically dialed 911, her hands shaking with rage. I need to report a fraud, she told the dispatcher. My husband's sister is trying to claim our house belongs to her. She's threatening us and refusing to leave our property. I waited patiently, setting my folder of documents on the coffee table, a new glass piece that didn't match anything our parents would have chosen. 20 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. Allison immediately launched into a hysterical explanation. This woman is harassing us and making false claims about our home. She needs to be removed. The house belongs to me, I explained calmly to the officers. I inherited it from our parents 3 years ago. My brother has been living here rent-free with my permission. I have all the documentation. I handed over the deed, property tax receipts, and the relevant portions of our parents' will. Officer Ramirez examined them carefully. These appear to be in order, he said finally. The property is legally registered to Madison Reynolds. Allison's face contorted with disbelief. That's impossible. Ryan told me he owned this house. All eyes turned to my brother, who seemed to shrink under the collective gaze. Ryan. Officer Jenkins prompted. Did you misrepresent ownership of this property to your wife? Ryan's voice was barely audible. I didn't correct her assumption. So, you've been living here with your sister's permission? Officer Jenkins clarified. Ryan nodded miserably. Allison exploded. You pathetic loser. You let me believe we had assets, security. I've been planning renovations, telling everyone this was our family home. Ma'am, please lower your voice, Officer Ramirez said firmly. I will not lower my voice. I've been lied to, deceived. Allison grabbed a decorative vase from the side table and hurled it against the wall, where it shattered. Ma'am. Officer Jenkins stepped forward. Control yourself, or we'll have to take action. Take action against me? I'm the victim here. She turned to Ryan, jabbing a finger into his chest. You spineless worm, living off your sister's charity while pretending to be a successful property owner. Ryan backed away, looking utterly broken. Allison, please, I can explain everything. Explain. Explain? She grabbed another object, a framed photo of their wedding, and threw it to the floor, glass shattering across the hardwood. That's enough, Officer Jenkins said firmly. Ma'am, you need to calm down or you'll be leaving in our car. Leaving? This is my home, Allison screamed, reaching for another breakable object. Officer Ramirez caught her wrist. Ma'am, legally, this is not your home, and you're destroying property that doesn't belong to you. Actually, I interjected, the decorative items are theirs. I'm only asserting ownership of the house itself and specific family heirlooms. Officer Jenkins nodded. Nevertheless, Miss Reynolds has the right to ask anyone to leave her property. You have 2 options right now. You can leave voluntarily, or if you continue this behavior, we can arrest you for destruction of property and disorderly conduct. The reality finally seemed to penetrate Allison's rage. She looked at Ryan, who stood helplessly by the staircase, then at me and finally at the officers. Fine, she spat. I'll go. But this isn't over. She grabbed her purse. Ryan, are you coming or staying with your precious sister? Ryan looked utterly torn, his eyes darting between us. I should go with you. We need to talk. Allison stomped toward the door, then turned for one final, venomous barb. Enjoy your empty house and your empty life, Madison. At least Ryan had the guts to try for something real, even if he had to lie about everything to get it. The door slammed behind them with such force that a picture fell from the wall. Would you like to file a report about the damaged items, ma'am? Officer Jenkins asked. I shook my head, suddenly exhausted.
No.
They're just things. After the officers left, I stood alone in the silent house, surrounded by the evidence of Allison's rage and the remnants of what had once been a loving family home. I sat on the unfamiliar leather couch and finally allowed myself to cry. I spent hours sitting there, alternating between tears and numb disbelief. How did we reach this point? This home that once represented warmth and family now felt like a battleground. I walked through each room, cataloging changes and absences. The kitchen, where Mom had taught us to bake, was now sterile. Dad's study, once filled with books and the subtle scent of his pipe tobacco, was now a generic home office. It was as if Allison had systematically erased all evidence that the Reynolds family had ever existed. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from Ryan. Staying at hotel tonight. Need time to think. What was there to say? Sorry you lied to your wife. Sorry you allowed family treasures to be sold off. The hurt ran too deep for text messages. Instead, I went upstairs to my old bedroom. Allison had converted it into a home gym with a treadmill where my bed had been. The pale blue walls I'd chosen as a teenager were now stark white. I unrolled a yoga mat and lay down, too emotionally drained to drive back to my apartment. Morning brought the sound of a key in the lock. I tensed, wondering if Allison had returned for round 2. But it was Ryan. He appeared in the doorway of the gym, looking haggard. You slept here? He asked, noticing my makeshift bed. Seemed easier than driving home. I replied. Where's Allison? Still at the hotel, he said, leaning against the doorframe. Not quite entering the room. She refused to let me sleep in the bed. Said I betrayed her. I didn't offer sympathy. Didn't you? Ryan winced.
Yes. No.
I don't know. He slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor. I never meant for any of this to happen, Maddie. What did you think would happen? I asked, my voice softer now. That I'd never mention owning the house? That she'd never find out? He trailed off, then tried again. When I met Allison, I was at rock bottom. No job, no girlfriend, living off my sister's charity. She seemed so strong, so put together. When she assumed I owned the house, it felt good to be seen as successful for once. So, you lied to impress her. I didn't correct her assumption, he corrected weakly. And then it snowballed. One small omission turned into this whole false life. I stood up, needing to move. And what about the family heirlooms? Was selling those part of maintaining your successful image? Shame washed over his face. That was Allison's idea. She said we needed to make the house ours by clearing out the old energy. I tried to save some things, hide them in the attic, but she's very persistent. Persistent, I repeated. Is that what we're calling it? She's not always like what you saw yesterday, Ryan said defensively. She can be loving, supportive. She helped me when I couldn't even get out of bed after Mom and Dad died. I paused by the window, looking out at the maple tree Dad had planted when we first moved in. Did she? Or did she find someone vulnerable and isolate him from his support system? Ryan was silent for a long moment. What are you saying? I'm saying that in the 6 months you've been married, you've stopped seeing friends, missed Mom and Dad's memorial gathering, changed the locks on family members, and let irreplaceable family treasures be sold off. Does that sound healthy to you? It's not that simple, he protested. Allison has trust issues from her past. Her ex-husband, the one who died in a workplace accident. I interrupted. Ryan frowned. Yes. Why? Have you ever verified any of her stories? Met anyone from her past? His expression told me he hadn't. Ryan, I said gently, sitting beside him. When was the last time you felt truly happy and at peace with Allison? Not anxious about saying the wrong thing or walking on eggshells. He stared at his hands. I don't know. We sat in silence as morning light filled the room. Finally, Ryan spoke again, his voice barely audible. I miss them so much, Maddie. Mom and Dad. Sometimes it hits me all over again that they're really gone. I know, I whispered, feeling my own grief rise freshly to the surface. Me too. After they died, he continued, it felt like everything good in my life collapsed. My job, Stephanie leaving, then my apartment. And you were so strong through all of it, never falling apart, handling the estate, your business. I felt like such a failure in comparison. I wasn't as strong as you think, I admitted. I just processed differently. I cried in the shower every morning for months, threw myself into work to avoid feeling the emptiness. Ryan looked surprised. You never showed it, because I was trying to be strong for you. I reached for his hand. That's what family does. And I repaid you by lying and letting Allison sell off family treasures. His voice broke. God, I'm so sorry, Maddie. As we sat together on the floor of what used to be my bedroom, Ryan's phone buzzed repeatedly with texts from Allison, increasingly demanding messages alternating between rage and desperate pleading. She's always checking up on me, he said, silencing the phone. At first, I thought it was sweet that she cared so much. Now it feels controlling, I suggested. He nodded slowly. Last month, I met an old colleague for lunch. She tracked my location on my phone and showed up at the restaurant, made a scene about me having a secret date, even though Jake and I were just discussing a potential freelance project. Did you get the project?
No.
After Allison's scene, Jake said it wasn't a good fit after all. Ryan's shoulders slumped. I haven't had a freelance job in 2 months now. This revelation concerned me deeply. Ryan had been an award-winning graphic designer. His talent hadn't disappeared, just his confidence and connections. What happened to all your design friends? Matt, Eliza, the whole studio crew. Allison said they were a negative influence, that they reminded me of my failure when I lost my job. He looked up suddenly. She deleted their contacts from my phone while I was sleeping. The more Ryan shared, the clearer the pattern became. I'd seen enough friends in toxic relationships to recognize the signs. Isolation from friends and family, financial control, erosion of self-esteem, constant monitoring. Ryan, I said carefully, I think you might be in an emotionally abusive relationship. He started to object, then stopped himself. I've had the same thought, he admitted, but then she'll do something thoughtful or seems so vulnerable about her own past trauma, and I convince myself I'm overreacting. That's part of the cycle, I explained. Tension, explosion, reconciliation, calm, then it starts all over again. We spent the next few hours talking more openly than we had in years. Ryan revealed more troubling behaviors, how Allison monitored his spending, criticized his appearance, belittled his career, and rewrote their relationship history to make herself the savior who fixed him after our parents' death. As the day progressed, Allison's texts grew increasingly frantic, demanding answers. I need some space to think. Ryan finally texted her. Her response was immediate. It's your sister, isn't it? She's turning you against me. After everything I've done for you. Ryan turned off his phone. That evening, I ordered pizza and we ate it on the back porch, reminiscing about family dinners and summer barbecues. For the first time in months, I saw glimpses of my real brother returning, his dry humor, his thoughtfulness, his passion for design, as he showed me sketches he'd been working on in secret. Allison doesn't like me wasting time drawing, he explained when I asked why he was hiding his work. I slept in the guest room that night. Ryan took the couch. Neither of us wanted to use the master bedroom Allison had claimed. Before turning in, I gave him some research materials on emotional abuse and codependent relationships I'd found online. You don't have to decide anything tonight, I told him. Just get informed. Recognize the patterns. The next morning, I woke to find Ryan already up, sitting at the kitchen table with a notepad filled with writings. I made a list, he said without preamble, of behaviors that scared or hurt me, things I've given up since meeting Allison, lies I've told to keep the peace. He pushed the pages toward me. It's 7 pages long, Maddie. I didn't need to read it. The fact that he'd filled 7 pages overnight said everything. What do you want to do? I asked. I need time away from her to think clearly, he said. Every time I try to set boundaries, she breaks down crying or gets so angry I end up apologizing for upsetting her. You can stay here as long as you need, I assured him. It's your home, too. Ryan looked around the kitchen at the unfamiliar decor, the absence of family photos, the sterile perfection that erased our history. No, he said quietly. This isn't home anymore. She's erased everything that made it special. The sadness in his voice broke my heart, but his awareness gave me hope. My brother was finally seeing the truth. The confrontation we'd been dreading arrived the next afternoon in the form of a pounding on the front door, so forceful it rattled the hinges. Ryan, I know you're in there with her. Open this door right now. Ryan and I exchanged glances from where we'd been sorting through a box of family photos we'd found stashed in the attic. I should talk to her, he said, though his face had gone pale. We'll both talk to her, I replied firmly. Allison's expression cycled rapidly from rage to calculated sweetness when Ryan opened the door with me standing beside him. Baby, she cooed, ignoring me completely. I've been so worried. Why haven't you answered my calls? She reached for him, but he stepped back. I needed space to think, Allison, he said, his voice steadier than I expected. She shot me a venomous look. I bet your sister has been filling your head with lies about me. Actually, Ryan countered, Madison has barely shared her opinions. I've been doing my own thinking. Allison tried to push past him into the house. Well, you can think at home. Let's go. Ryan didn't move. I'm staying here for now. Her sweet facade cracked. In your sister's house? Like a child running home to mommy? How pathetic. It's not pathetic to need family support, he replied. Family support?
She scoffed.
More like family control. She's always been jealous of our relationship, trying to keep you dependent on her. I remained silent, recognizing this as a critical moment for Ryan to establish his own boundaries. That's not true, Ryan said. Madison has been nothing but supportive. She let me live here rent-free, never pressured me about finding work, and kept quiet when I lied about owning the house. Because she wants to control you, Allison insisted. If you were independent, she'd have no one to feel superior to. Ryan shook his head. You know what's interesting? Before I met you, I was starting to get back on my feet, freelancing again, reconnecting with friends. It's only since we got together that I've become isolated and dependent. Allison's strategy shifted instantly. Her eyes welled with tears, and her voice became fragile. How can you say that? After everything I'd done for you? I saved you when you were at your lowest. No one else wanted you then. I bit my tongue, fighting the urge to contradict her manipulation. That's not true either, Ryan said gently. I had friends and family who cared. You just convinced me they didn't. Allison's tears vanished as quickly as they'd appeared. She pulled a folder from her oversized purse.
Fine.
If that's how you want to play this, I've consulted a lawyer. As your wife, I have rights to this property regardless of whose name is on the deed. She thrust a document toward us. This is a formal claim of marital property rights. Since we've been living here and making improvements as a married couple, I'm entitled to at least half ownership. I took the paper, scanning it quickly. This isn't a legal document, Allison. It's just something you typed up, my lawyer said. You haven't spoken to a lawyer, I interrupted calmly. No real attorney would prepare this. It's full of misapplied legal terms and has no proper formatting or case citations. Her face reddened. You don't know everything, Madison, just because you think you're so smart with your real estate business. Actually, I cut in. I do know about property law. It's part of my job. And I've already consulted my attorney about this situation. This wasn't entirely true. I'd made an appointment, but hadn't met with Catherine yet. But the bluff worked. Allison faltered momentarily. Ryan, she tried again, her voice softening. Please, baby, come home. We can work this out. I love you. Ryan looked torn, and for a moment, I feared he might relent. Then he straightened his shoulders. I need time, Allison. I'm not saying our marriage is over, but I need space to think clearly, and I need you to respect that. Respect, she spat. Like you respected me by lying about owning this house, making me look like a fool. You're right, Ryan acknowledged. I was wrong to lie. That's on me. But your reaction, throwing things, screaming at me in front of the police? That's not healthy either. So, this is all my fault. Her voice rose dangerously. No one's saying that. I interjected. But right now, you both need space to cool down and think. Allison rounded on me. Stay out of this. This is between me and my husband. Madison stays, Ryan said firmly. This is her house, and she's my sister. Something in his tone must have finally penetrated. Allison stepped back, reassessing the situation. Her gaze turned calculating. Fine, take your time, but remember, I've made sacrifices for you, too, Ryan. I've put my whole life on hold for our relationship. She turned toward her car, then paused to deliver a parting shot. By the way, I invited my parents to stay with us next month. They've already bought non-refundable tickets. After she drove away, Ryan let out a long breath. Her parents aren't coming. She doesn't even speak to them. She's told me 3 different stories about why they're estranged. The manipulation never stops, does it? I observed. No, Ryan said sadly. It doesn't. The next day, I met with my attorney, Catherine Mendez, a sharp-minded lawyer who had handled my real estate contracts for years. After explaining the situation, she outlined our options. Since you're the legal owner, you have every right to determine who lives in the property, she explained. The fact that you allowed your brother to stay there rent-free doesn't give his wife any claim to ownership, especially in such a short-term marriage. What about the improvements they've made? I asked. Unless they can document substantial, permanent improvements that significantly increase the property value, it's a non-issue. Painting walls and buying furniture doesn't constitute a legal claim. Catherine prepared a formal letter clarifying the ownership situation and gently but firmly requesting Allison remove her personal belongings within 2 weeks. I'll also prepare a formal eviction notice as a backup, she advised. Hopefully, it won't be necessary, but it's good to have it ready. Meanwhile, Ryan had been doing his own research. He contacted 3 old friends from his design agency days, hesitantly reaching out after months of silence. Their responses were immediate and supportive, confirming what I'd told him. His support network had never abandoned him. Matt invited me to lunch tomorrow, he told me, sounding both nervous and excited. Said their firm is swamped with projects and could use freelance help. That's great, Ryan, I said sincerely. You're incredibly talented. They'd be lucky to have you. His smile faded. What if Allison shows up again, makes a scene? Then Matt will see exactly why you've been out of touch, I pointed out. Real friends understand when someone's in a difficult situation. 2 days later, Ryan returned from his lunch meeting with actual work assignments and a provisional offer to rejoin the agency part-time. It felt so normal, he marveled, like the past 2 years of fog were lifting. That evening, we hosted an impromptu dinner with 4 of Ryan's closest friends. The house felt alive again with conversation and laughter. As I watched my brother engaging passionately in discussions about design trends, I saw sparks of his old self returning. After his friends left, Ryan made a decision. I'm going to ask Allison for a separation, he said. I need time to figure out who I am without her influence. The next morning, we drafted a compassionate but firm email, as Catherine had advised against an in-person conversation given Allison's volatility. Ryan explained his need for space, offered to arrange for her to collect her belongings, and suggested they both seek individual counseling before making permanent decisions. Allison's response came within minutes. A single line, "You'll regret this." Catherine helped us file a temporary restraining order after that ominous message, citing the previous property destruction and threatening behavior. The court granted a limited order prohibiting Allison from entering the property without advance arrangement. 3 days later, We discovered why. A neighbor called to tell us they'd seen someone matching Allison's description trying to enter through the back door. We rushed over to find a broken window and several rooms in disarray. Most disturbing was the master bedroom, where Allison had spray-painted "Liar" across the wall and slashed the mattress. The few remaining family photos had been defaced, my face scratched out in each one. "We need to call the police," I said, pulling out my phone. Ryan looked devastated. I never thought she'd go this far. The security cameras I'd installed after the initial confrontation had captured everything. Officer Ramirez returned with a new partner. "This is a clear violation of the restraining order," he confirmed. "We'll put out an APB for her vehicle." They found Allison at a bar 3 miles away, still with spray paint residue on her hands. She was arrested for breaking and entering, vandalism, and violation of a court order. While Ryan struggled with guilt over her arrest, a more complete picture of Allison emerged during the legal proceedings. The widow's story was entirely fabricated. She had 2 previous marriages, both ending in restraining orders against her. Her supposed deceased husband was very much alive and living in Arizona with a restraining order of his own. "I should have seen the signs," Ryan berated himself. "Manipulators are experts at what they do," I reminded him. "And you were vulnerable after losing mom and dad." As Allison faced legal consequences, Ryan began the process of filing for divorce, supported by friends and a good therapist. The facade she had constructed crumbled completely when police discovered many of our family heirlooms in a storage unit rented in her name. Items she had claimed were donated or sold, but had actually been hoarding for herself. The recovery of these treasures, Dad's books, Mom's jewelry box, the photo albums, brought a measure of healing to both of us. Each reclaimed item felt like reclaiming a piece of our family history. The road ahead would be long, with legal proceedings and emotional recovery still to navigate. But for the first time in years, it felt like we were moving in the right direction. 6 months passed, bringing changes neither Ryan nor I could have anticipated. The family home, once a battleground of tension and deception, gradually transformed back into a place of comfort and healing. After the chaos of Allison's arrest and the subsequent legal proceedings, Ryan and I made a decision to temporarily live in the house together. What began as a practical arrangement, Ryan needed a safe place and I wanted to restore the home, evolved into a meaningful period of reconnection. We repainted each room together, choosing colors that honored our parents' tastes while bringing in fresh energy. The formal living room, which Mom had always kept in shades of blue, we painted a serene seafoam that caught the morning light beautifully. Dad's study returned to the warm cedar tone he loved, though we modernized it with crisp, white trim. "Remember how Dad used to measure heights on this doorframe?" Ryan asked one afternoon as we sanded down woodwork in the kitchen. I ran my fingers over the faint marks still visible in the wood. "Every birthday, without fail. He was so excited when you finally outgrew him." "I was 16, Ryan laughed. He acted like I'd won an Olympic medal. These shared memories, once painful to recall, now brought a bittersweet comfort. We were rediscovering our history, not just through stories, but through the physical space we were reclaiming. Ryan's therapy was showing results. The anxious, diminished man who had walked on eggshells around Allison was gradually replaced by someone more resembling my competent, creative brother. He had secured a part-time position at his old design firm, with the understanding that he would transition to full-time when he felt ready. The creative director actually thanked me for coming back. He told me one evening over dinner. Said clients had been asking specifically for my work. "Of course they were," I replied. "Your talent didn't go anywhere, Ryan. It was just buried for a while." My own therapy journey had been revealing as well. I'd always seen myself as the strong one, the capable sister who had everything under control. But sessions with Dr. Patel helped me recognize how I'd sometimes enabled Ryan's dependency by swooping in to solve problems, rather than supporting him in developing his own solutions. "There's a difference between helping and rescuing," Dr. Patel had explained. "Helping empowers. Rescuing can inadvertently disempower." This insight changed our dynamic subtly, but significantly. I found myself consulting Ryan on decisions about the house rather than simply informing him. He, in turn, began taking more initiative, whether it was handling contractor negotiations for the bathroom renovation or researching investment options for his growing savings. The legal aftermath of Allison's actions proved less traumatic than we'd feared. Her previous pattern of behavior worked against her in court, and she eventually accepted a plea deal that included mandatory therapy, community service, and continued legal distance from both Ryan and me. "Do you ever wonder if she's getting help?" Ryan asked one Sunday as we prepared our now traditional family dinner. We had reclaimed this ritual, sometimes including friends, but always reserving it as a touchstone for our connection. "I hope so," I answered honestly. "Not for our sake, but for hers and for whoever comes next in her life." Ryan nodded thoughtfully as he chopped vegetables for the salad. "I've been thinking a lot about forgiveness lately. And I'm not there yet," he admitted. "But I'm working toward not letting anger consume me." "That's progress, right?" "Huge progress," I agreed. The recovery of our family heirlooms had been one of the most healing aspects of the past months. Each item Allison had hidden away in storage was like recovering a piece of our parents' legacy. Mom's hand-painted serving dishes once again graced our Sunday dinner table. Dad's leather-bound first editions returned to the study shelves. The Tiffany lamp illuminated the corner where Mom had always sat to read. Most precious were the photo albums, which we spent several weekends organizing and preserving. The images captured moments we'd almost forgotten. Summer vacations at Lake Michigan, Dad attempting to teach us both to fish, Mom's triumphant smile when she received her master's degree. Our history, tangible and irreplaceable. As spring arrived, Ryan began talking about finding his own place. "Not because I want to leave," he clarified, "but because I need to know I can stand on my own." "I understand," I told him, and I did. "The house will always be here. You're home when you need it." We sat on the back porch watching fireflies appear in the twilight, a glass of Dad's favorite bourbon between us. "I've been thinking," Ryan said after a comfortable silence. "Maybe it's time we talk about what happens to the house long term." "What do you mean?" "It's legally yours, but it's our family home. Maybe we should consider making it officially shared property." The suggestion touched me deeply. "Are you sure?" "After everything with Allison, that's exactly why," he explained. "She tried to claim something that wasn't hers. This is different. This is acknowledging what's always been true, that our parents left their legacy to both of us, just in different forms." We decided to consult with Catherine about creating a family trust for the property, ensuring it would remain a touchstone for both of us, regardless of where life took us. In July, exactly a year after the confrontation with Allison, Ryan signed the lease on a small but charming apartment near his design firm. It felt right, somehow, that this step toward independence came as we approached the anniversary of when he nearly lost himself completely. "It's walking distance to work," he explained as he showed me around. "And there's a spare room for when I start taking on private clients again." I noticed framed family photos already arranged on his bookshelf, not hidden away as they had been with Allison, but prominently displayed. Among them was a new addition, a recent picture of Ryan and me on the porch of the family home, laughing as we attempted to recreate a childhood pose. "Looks like you're ready," I said, squeezing his shoulder. "Thanks to you," he replied. "No," I corrected gently. "You did the hard work. I just provided a safe space for you to do it." As I drove home that evening, I reflected on the tumultuous journey of the past year. What had begun as a property dispute had evolved into something far more significant, a reclamation not just of physical space, but of our relationship, our family history, and our individual strengths. The lessons had been hard-won, but invaluable. I'd learned that supporting someone doesn't mean solving all their problems. Ryan had learned that love shouldn't require erasing yourself or your past. We'd both learned that honesty, even when uncomfortable, builds stronger foundations than comfortable lies ever could. The house, when I pulled into the driveway, welcomed me with familiar warmth. It was quieter now without Ryan's daily presence, but not empty, never empty. It remained filled with memories, with history, with the essence of the family that had shaped us both. I poured a small glass of bourbon and raised it toward the family portrait above the fireplace. Mom and Dad, smiling broadly. Ryan and I flanking them with the awkward poses of teenagers. "We're okay," I told them softly. "We made it through." And I knew, with a certainty that transcended logic, that they would have been proud of both their children. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to stand your ground when someone tried to take what was rightfully yours, or watched a loved one get caught in a toxic relationship, I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life stories about family boundaries and finding strength in difficult situations. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are the ones that ultimately bring the most healing.